The Catholic Morning Show on Iowa Catholic Radio.
Thanks for tuning in this morning. Alexia, as we talking about all the events that are coming up, we have we're going to be making an announcement very soon. We're going to be bringing a Catholic Answers Live apologist to the state of Iowa on a little Growing the Faith tour. We'll be making 3 stops later in July, and later this week we'll be announcing that. I wonder how we could tease, because we can't. We're hoping to get the third date confirmed before we announce all 3. I don't know. We want to get it announced this week. But we're going to have to think of a fun way to get people.
Think of a quippy little tease and see if you guys can guess. So make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, because we'll be doing a little tease this week. And so see if you guys can guess the locations to which said person will be speaking.
Or who the speaker might be. We'll be able to talk about that here as the week goes along. But we want to remind you that we'll be celebrating First Friday Mass at our St. Gabriel the Archangel Chapel here at 1355 50th Street. We had 18 people at First Friday Mass last month. I'd like to break that record. So even though if you've been here and you've seen the chapel is relatively small, only seats about a dozen to 14 people, depending on how we utilize the back bench in the chapel space. Plenty of chairs that we can sit outside. The Lord is present. We'll have Father Takapadurum, or Takadapurum. I always remember if the D comes before the P when I say his name, but he gave a delightful homily. I remember last month, it was his first time here, and he said, I will be back, in Terminator
We'd love to
style.
hear that. I'll be back. Yeah. And it's honestly, even though it is a small chapel, but it almost, just right now when we were talking about it, it just reminds me of the time where we, way back when we weren't allowed to celebrate Mass, and so we get to all just cluster all together and get to celebrate.
Absolutely.
And receive the Eucharist. So.
Mass at 11:30 on Friday. So if you're able to join us, we'd love to have you do that. Alexia, as we launch into summer, what sort of, do you have any travel plans or things that you are looking forward to as we launch into this unofficial start to summer following Memorial Day weekend?
You know what? I'm just at the stage of life where most of my travel just consists around my friends getting married and having to travel for their weddings. So it's worth it. I have one of my really close friends who's like a sister to me. She'll have her bachelorette party. So it'll be either Florida or Georgia, depending on if it's at her parents' place or not. And then her wedding then in November.
No, so she's a friend from college?
Yes. Yeah. From Benedictine. It was one of the women that I lived with my senior year. And I'm just really looking forward. It's going to be a lovely wedding. And it's just so fun to be able to see college friends again. And, we all kind of dispersed and we're all around now, all the states, and Kansas and South Carolina, Georgia. So we all kind of spread out DC. So it'll be fun to see everyone again.
Very good. Well, I know we've got a couple of weddings on our family calendar for this month. Of course, as a deacon, I get to attend a few bonus weddings as helping with the liturgy and whatnot. But it used to be when our kids were younger. They're 20, almost 22 and 19 now. And kind of the busyness of the school year, you're like, man, I can't wait till summer gets here and things slow down a little bit. But that's a fallacy. That's a lie. Summer doesn't slow down. The schedule,
it doesn't.
The activities just change. And I feel like almost summer can be even more busy with all the different things that are going on. And as we've talked about, the calendar is filling up, not only for Iowa Catholic Radio, but in my personal life as well. We'll have of course, mentioned the golf outing, the Catholic Answers speaker series, the Iowa State Fair, but sprinkled in there, our family will take a little summer trip up to a cabin in Minnesota to spend a week.
That sounds perfect.
It does. But I need to get away from our house when I do have extended time off. Otherwise, I'll work myself to death. This last weekend, got caught up on some outdoor chores around the house, and I'm not going to lie. I feel like an old. You mentioned crotchety old man earlier. I don't feel crotchety, but I do feel like an old man.
I was like,
morning.
I have an old soul. So
my legs hurt, my back hurts.
yeah, barely roll out of bed. Yeah,
but it's great to be with you here this morning and talking about the opportunities that we have to live out our faith. And one way that we can do that is through some summer reading. And so we'll turn now to our guest joining us from Australia. She's the author of the novel Every Inch a Saint. Welcoming in Kate Clinch. Good morning.
Hello, it's good to speak to you.
Yes, and great that you could join us here this morning. And I want to ask you first about this particular book, talking about the servant of God, Eileen O'Connor. A little different in that you've written a novel on her life as opposed to a biography type of book. Why the approach of a novel?
Okay, there are actually some good biographies already written about her, and the people that wrote some of those were writing at a time where they could actually speak to people firsthand who had memories of Eileen when she was alive. So there's tremendous power in that, and I didn't have that opportunity, of course, because Eileen died in 1921. So I've actually written other novels. This is the first one that ever got published. But I've been writing novels since I was 10. When I was 10, the one I wrote then wasn't very good. But so it was kind of natural that when I wanted, like, I felt inspired to write about Eileen, but it was natural that it would be a novel because that was what I have written.
Well, for those who have not read a biography on Eileen O'Connor, tell us a little bit about her.
Okay, she was born in 1892 in Melbourne in Australia. As a child, she moved with her family to Sydney, and she unfortunately contracted tuberculosis by the age of 3, and the infection lodged in the bones of her spine. So you can imagine that's an extraordinarily painful, chronic, disabling illness. So Eileen only grew to be about 3'10" tall partly because she was just so unwell that she didn't grow, but also because there was a severe deformity in her spine as a result of the infection. And she was partially paralysed for much of her life. But from her own sickbed, she founded an order of nurses who went to care for the poor in the slums of Sydney.
And so then go ahead.
Which is a remarkable achievement.
Yes. Yeah, tremendous. I was sitting here before we started our conversation with you, I was complaining about my own aches and pains, and you immediately put it into perspective for me. And so with the novel, what more will people learn about Eileen, and what direction did you take this story?
What I did was I invented a fictional best friend who had grown up with Eileen and who recounted her story when the fictional best friend was sort of coming towards the end of her life. But because Eileen's story was just so, in some ways, alien to a wide readership, there was a very strong drive in her to take her suffering and use it to save people's souls. And she had that drive from the age of 19. And someone who's been brought up with a very strong Catholic tradition can understand that. But someone like me who is not Catholic, I found it heartbreaking reading about the choices that she made, and how that was what drove her. So what I wanted to do was take this woman who is just the most incredible, saintly, holy human being, who was so compassionate and so driven, and bring her message, which is a message of hope. And how do we overcome obstacles? And how do we have compassion for each other? I wanted to bring that part of Eileen's message right into the present. So the fictional best friend had descendants who discovered her story in the present.
Wow. As Catholics, I would say that one of the things that we do is we sort of adopt saints or ask saints to accompany us in a way of, so again, I would say this idea of a fictional best friend may not be that foreign of a concept or an idea to many Catholics. Talk about the sort of the lasting impact. Again, she's a second saint in waiting there from Australia. Talk about sort of the devotion that maybe is given her there in Australia today.
Okay, Eileen is not very well known, and that's one of the things that I wanted to contribute to, was making this story, which just moved me so much, more available to people. She's well known in the local area in Sydney where she lived. And there are also other pockets, because the Order of Nurses that she established actually had services in other towns. So that was known. In her own lifetime, she was revered as a saint. After the obstacles and the opposition from the church and all the sort of archetypal things that seem to happen to a lot of saints. But she was revered by people who knew her as a saint, to the extent that when she went to a garden party and was carried by her nurses to go to a picnic that was fundraising in the garden of the grounds of the nurses' home, when she left, people would collect samples of the soil as relics to take home. That was in her lifetime. The Order of Domiciliary Nurses that she founded is actually still in existence now. It's run by lay nurses now. As you know, there are changes with manpower when it comes to religious sisters now. But that Order of Nurses is still in existence.
We got
over 100 years after she established it.
Oh, sorry about that. We've got just another minute or so with Kate Clinch. She's the author of a novel, Every Inch a Saint, a novel about Eileen O'Connor, Australia's second saint in waiting. So in addition to bringing about awareness to her life, what else do you hope the reader is able to take away from this wonderful novel?
There's a real message of hope and healing, and the fact that we can find a source of strength that gets us through our darkest hours.
Very powerful. That's a very powerful message. Where can people get the book?
It's quite widely available in America, so through the usual online stores, but also Barnes & Noble and the indie bookstores will have it as well.
Wonderful. Well, we'll have some of that in our show notes. Kate Clinch, she is the author of Every Inch a Saint. Again, a saint, not a servant of God, who's not that well known, but through this novel and more, I think we'll come to appreciate a very, we'll say, small in stature, but very large in life and holiness. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, Kate.
Thank you very much.
Listen to the Catholic Morning Show weekdays at 7 a.m. Central on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network, iowacatholicradio.com, or the Iowa Catholic Radio app.